The LONGBOX CRUSADE presents Transformers Chronicles.
Hello and welcome back to Transformers Chronicles. I'm Delvin, aka the Dark Web. And in case you're new to the show, you picked a good one. Let me tell you what this thing is all about. We're going for a wild, crazy ride, chronicling the awesome, wacky, and sometimes deadly world of Marvel Comics, the Transformers. But I won't be going at it alone. Let's bring up Pat Sampson. We call him DJ Cristato sometimes. Pat, welcome to the show, sir. I'm not going to ask you what cool things you did because I already know of one cool thing you did, but I can just, but I can give you an opportunity to, riff and say a joke or whatever you like here.
Well, yeah, that's true. I was able to do a cool thing, and I was able to do a cool thing with all of you guys here on the show. So it was very cool to do. But the better thing that was cool for me is recently I've been kind of out there, found this really cool thing that's going to give me some extra strength, body, and just I'm going to beef up. I'm going to be so right now, I'm a lean, under 200 or something like that, but I'm really going to get beefed up, and I think I'm going to take over the world because I'm all about this stuff. It's called beefcake, and I love it.
You've got to be careful. Too much beefcake leads to madness and often death.
It's beefcake.
Oh, wait, but you should see his tech specs now.
Yeah. Wait, let me read the box. Oh, it's cheesecake. Never mind. It's cheese.
I think we're safe. So you go on mute, enjoy some cheesecake. I'm going to move on to the lesser half of Married with Content. His name is Jonathan Schaefer Hames. And never has the term Transformers librarian applied more than it does right this.
That is very true. It's been a heck of a day. Not only did we get to do the cool thing that we're going to talk about later, but earlier I started like right before we did that, I just worked at the library in Mercer, Wisconsin for the first time, where I'm an assistant librarian there. So that was pretty cool. Also, even cooler, I have finally assembled my entire collection of all of the Transformers that appear in this issue. I haven't read this issue yet, but I read a list and I've got it here, and I've just decided I'm going to do whatever happens to them in the issue to the toy. I'm just going to look at this way. Oh, my God.
So while John's recovering, we're going to move to the greater half of Married with Content. Her name, welcome back, by the way, is Maggie Schaefer Hames. Welcome back to the show, Maggie. It's good to have you back.
Thank you. But if I'm here, then who's flying the Rod Pod? It's good to be back.
Skylink.
He's too big.
Oh, then John.
Yeah, I suppose. He's on his own, though.
Yep.
Well, I mean, there's a teleporter that we have that's fully functional. You can use the teleporter just to get back there at any time.
That's good because the one on the Rod Pod does not work.
Definitely doesn't.
You do not want to know where we put Ryan Daly that one time.
And his rubber ducky.
Yes.
You know what? Probably the least amount of questions I ask there, the better. I guess I should talk about myself very quickly. I'm fine. Everything's good. We just did an interview with Bob Budiansky. It was awesome.
Anyway, buddy.
Yeah. Close personal friend of the podcast, Bob Budiansky, dropped by and answered a few questions.
Yeah,
and corrected us on how to pronounce his name. Budiansky.
It's Budiansky. If you ever said Budiansky like I just did, you're wrong, and you should flog yourself for being incorrect. But insiders like us, we know better. Wink.
See, but you know what? This is just the Chudley thing coming back full circle for me. I feel validated in this moment.
Oh man. TFWiki.net describes our host here as the writer of most of the Marvel's U.S. Transformers comic book series and the creator of much of the mythos, characters, and names behind the first several years of the franchise. Wikipedia says this gentleman worked at Marvel Comics for approximately 20 years. He is responsible for much of the writing of the original Marvel Transformers comics, Concede the names of the most original Transformers, including Decepticon leader Megatron, Autobot medic Ratchet, Starscream Sideswipe, and the Decepticon Ravage. He also wrote the vast majority of the descriptive tech spec biographies printed on the Transformers toy packages that Hasbro produced in the 1980s, giving each figure unique personality traits, as well as being a cover artist, editor, co-creator of Sleepwalker. And Hasbro has named him one of the first 4 human inductees into the Transformers Hall of Fame for his contributions to the creation of the franchise. You guessed it, it is none other than Bob Budiansky. Welcome, Bob. We are honored to have you. Oh, and he's holding up the trophy. I was off reading the script. I saw that. Oh, that trophy is impressive.
That's the Hall of Fame trophy.
Cool.
Oh,
That is
really
great.
cool.
That's really neat.
Anyway, just bragging. Go ahead.
Brag away. My buddy Jared suggested, to warm you up, I give you a fast 5 questions of sorts. Questions that are supposed to be easy to answer, so hopefully they are. Question 1, who's your favorite?
I'm not being graded. I don't really care. Yeah.
No, not at all. No grades, I promise. Who is your favorite Autobot and or Decepticon? It does not have to be confined to your run only.
Well, I was just looking at my run, but that's what I'm most familiar with. That would be Blaster, because Blaster was the main character in several of my better stories, at least in my opinion. So I really enjoyed writing that character.
Awesome. What about least favorite Autobot or Decepticon?
I get that kind of question in variations, like, what's your least favorite song? Who remembers these guys? Or these songs? Like, you don't remember your most favorite, but your least favorite. I don't really. There were so many that I had to include in the comic book that may have only appeared for like a panel or two. So how could I say they're among my favorites if I barely use them? I don't really have a least favorite. Just characters that were more prominent and characters that were less prominent.
Gotcha. So along those lines, then, who's your favorite Autobot or Decepticon to write?
Well, like I just said, Blaster easily, because some of my best stories, he was the featured character. He was the lead character.
Did you have a Decepticon by any chance?
I jumped around in Decepticon. So I enjoyed writing Megatron. I don't know if I have a favorite. I enjoyed writing Megatron. I enjoyed writing Starscream. I enjoyed writing Rat-Bat because he was such an oddball the way I wrote him anyway.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Nobody stands out like Blaster does among the Autobots for me.
Gotcha. And who's your favorite Transformers artist to work with?
Oh, now I'm going to be very diplomatic here. I mean, I worked with a lot of really fine artists in my time at Marvel. They all did their best on what I consider to be a very difficult book to draw. Especially these were artists of an earlier generation that didn't grow up playing with Transformers toys. They grew up drawing comic books with people in them. So to ask them to, we'll have a few people scattered here and there, but mostly you're going to be drawing dozens of different mechanical life forms with tons of reference material that you're going to have to look at constantly in order to get them approximately to look like they're supposed to look. That was a real challenge for all of these guys, and they stepped up and they did their best job. I will say that for the short time that I worked with Herb Trimpe on a few issues, Herb was terrific. I thought he really captured the spirit of what I was trying to do, but he only worked on a few issues, and he did a few extra covers in addition to the issues that he did the interiors. But anyway, I enjoyed working with all of the artists that I worked.
Awesome. And last one, this is more from my buddy John over there. What's your favorite moment writing Sleepwalker?
My favorite moment writing Sleepwalker. Wow, that's
Yes.
I wrote this one. I tried to write what I would kind of call trippy scenes, like that involved this mindscape, this dimension of mind and dreams. And there was one thing I had a lot of fun with, where there's a part of the brain where memories go to be forgotten. And so you see these scenes where characters are talking to each other. I think it was Sleepwalker. Might have been Rick, his human counterpart. I think it was Sleepwalker. And they're basically trying to avoid being flushed down this mental toilet, basically. So I had fun writing that. I also had fun writing a scene at the beginning of one issue where Rick and Sleepwalker get swapped, as they often did. But but Rick is now in the mindscape dimension, and Sleepwalker has to walk Rick's dog. So that's like what's a dog? But he does his best. So he's walking the dog and he's sleepwalking. That was
Nice.
I had a lot of fun with that book. I was able to do a lot of fun things. At least I thought so.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for that. Those are my Fast Five. I'm going to pass it off to John because I know he has a question or two to ask.
Yeah, I better make sure I stick to the important ones here. I've made no secret of my own strong Sleepwalker fandom. I used to love that book when I was a kid. I still need to read a bunch of them. Yes, Bob. It's really been great to meet you. I have to tell you, gush a little bit before I calm down and be a normal human being again. But I mean, you and this comic book writing got me into comic books through a long series of steps, and I do have to thank you for that. And also, Sleepwalker let me know that comics can just go to insane places in a good way, and I love that.
Oh, I'm really happy that you said that because that's the kind of experience I was trying to create in Sleepwalker. So I'm glad you liked it. For that reason.
I did. I thought it was like Kirby by way of Jim Starlin with a
definitely two influences of mine.
Oh.
Thank you.
Then I guessed right. Hooray.
There were many other influences in there as well, but those are good influences. Jim Starlin, his Warlock, got me back partially got me back interested in comic books again. Because when I got to high school, I stopped collecting comics. And when I got to college, a friend of mine showed me some things that I was completely unfamiliar with. And the Warlock was one of them, and I really got into that.
That's great. Now, all that praise aside, why did you do my Predacons so wrong, Bob? Every time they show up, you bloom them up. My real question, though, is could you tell us just a little bit the writing process, how your process was and how you worked with different artists? Was it like Marvel method style, with like story, then art, then writing, or did you write a script first, or did it vary from different artists you worked with?
I wrote Marvel method. Now, before I was writing Transformers, I was an artist. I was an artist on Ghost Rider for a while, which was also, and I worked with two different extremely talented writers, Roger Stern and then J.M. DeMatteis. And we all worked in Marvel style. As an artist, I really appreciated it because I felt it gave me more freedom to express myself visually rather than be locked into exactly what the writer was visualizing. And a writer is a writer. That doesn't necessarily have the same visual imagination that an artist has. Not to say they don't have visual imagination, but I think an artist has a little more latitude if he's not too constrained by a script. So I wrote Marvel method when I did Transformers, but I would break it down into sections. Like this scene goes from pages 4 to 6. So like the artist would have an idea of how to fit it into the overall story, this particular scene, I want 2/3 of the page for this big explosive event to, really play this up big. So you give them a lot of directions besides describing exactly what the action is as well. And as far as constructing a story, where it came from, I was like any writer. You're affected by all the experiences that influence your life. So whether it was people I knew, movies I watched, the TV news, what I read in the newspaper, it could be any number of things that would enter into different ideas that I brought into the stories. My favorite Sleepwalker, wrong comic book. My favorite Transformers story that I wrote.
I'm here for it, whatever, man. My
favorite Transformers story that I wrote is I think issue number 17, which introduced Blaster, which is called The Smelting Pool. And the climactic moment of that story, I basically borrowed from a movie from the 1930s, and I just adapted it to my story. And
help us out, Bob. Which movie?
Was Gunga Din, by the way.
I'm trying to think back to my film.
Anybody ever watch Gunga Din or read the book from Rudyard Kipling?
I've read the book in a lit class a long time ago, and now a bunch of memories are becoming unlocked. So you're talking about him like trying to save Scrounge, and then like Scrounge of sacrificing himself to.
Yes, that scene was played in the movie by I forget the name of the actor, Sam Jaffe, I think. and he's trying to save the British soldiers, led by Cary Grant in the movie, from the thuggy death cult that were about to attack or something. And he climbs up a tower and gives the trumpet to warn everybody, warn all the British soldiers, and turn the tide of the battle. And in doing so, he's killed because he's shot, or I don't know if they shoot him with arrows or something. He basically is killed in the act of saving everybody, which is similar to what happens to Scrounge at the very end of the smelting pool. Just him reaching up and extending his fingers so he can give the secret message to Blaster as he's dying. So I took all of that directly from Gunga Din. Thank you, Rudyard Kipling.
You heard it here first, folks.
No, I said it
Cary Grant.
It's a whole story, but anyway, that's an example of where some of my ideas might have come from.
Yeah, I do remember that. Me as a newer Transformer reader, as we're going through this with the other folks, once you said that, I do remember us saying that was a pivotal point in that particular issue of how much we really appreciated and thought that point that was done, him giving himself up to become the bridge and make that gap and save Blaster. And yeah, wow, what a moment.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea from that. I must have seen that movie, when I was a kid. I mean, I wasn't a kid in the 1930s, but not that old. But I love that moment where seemingly the weakest character at the most critical moment is the most heroic, and will sacrifice himself for the greater good. So I just loved the way that all came together at that moment in the movie, and I tried to replicate some of that in that particular issue of Transformers.
Yeah, long-time listener, first-time caller. So, Car Wash of Doom, I found to be quite enjoyable. I like comics that are fun and wacky, and I just wanted to know where that idea came from.
It came from Gunga Din.
Car Wash of Doom?
Gunga Din was the basis of the Temple of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Oh.
Okay.
All right.
There's so many similarities between those two movies. There's the thuggy death cults are in both movies. I mean, just coincidental. I wasn't thinking of it consciously as Gunga Din, but since we're talking about it, Car Wash of Doom is just a direct parody, if you want to call it that, of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. We even copied the lettering style in the logo, in the title for the book.
Now, I caught the lettering from Indiana Jones, but like the Gunga Din thing is going to make me go back and watch a very classic movie.
Not that it's exactly the same story, but it has so many similar elements between Gunga Din and the Temple of Doom. So if you ever want to, connect the dots, watch both movies, just see what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like Hidden Fortress and Star Wars kind of thing.
Yeah. So I was clearly inspired by Gunga Din, as is, I guess, half of my literary influences in my comic books. Gunga Din's in everything. I just made that connection. Like Gunga Din was in Smelting Pool. It was also in Car Wash of Doom.
That's great.
That's funny. There are also two of the issues we all rated 10 out of 10 too. So apparently we all better rate or watch Gunga Din.
Well, I only steal from the classics. So well, anyway, that answered your question, Maggie. That
yes,
was
it did.
Basically a direct homage to the Temple of Doom. Yes.
Maggie, you had another question, right?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Oh, okay. The other question that I was actually going to ask is, what, aside from writing, what other creative interests do you have? Perhaps you quilt. I don't know.
No, I haven't gotten to that yet.
Yeah.
Other creative interests? I mean, I came up at Marvel wanting to be an artist, which I succeeded in doing. So I have art abilities, and I still do artwork for various clients who want commissions. I'm working on a trading card set right now. For some original sketches for it, and
cool.
different things. I mean, it's like I probably do more art these days than writing, frankly, as far as creative outlets. And I don't know, I do crossword puzzles.
There you go. Do you have a preference between art and writing? Is there one that you find easier?
Well, there's more outlets for me these days. There's more outlets for me to write. There's more outlets for me to do artwork.
Okay.
People are always coming at me to do art, but sometimes, let's see, do I have it here? On some occasions, I do write. Here it is. So 2 years ago, Abrams Publishing put out this book, the X-Men Trading Cards book. So basically, it reprints the set of X-Men trading cards by Jim Lee out in 1992. And they asked me to write the introduction. And so the introduction is 8,000 words. It's a very lengthy introduction. So it was great. You know, it was the first time I ever wrote a book published by a major publisher. It was a lot of fun. And I got to interview all the people I worked with back in 1992 on this trading card set. So except for Jim.
That's awesome.
So that was fun. So on occasion, on rare occasions, I guess I get to write, but usually if I'm doing anything creative, it's artwork.
Sure.
I was surprised. I want to add on just that to Maggie's, because the first time that I probably saw your work and didn't even realize it or was close to it, or your earliest work, was Ghost Rider. I've seen plenty of your Ghost Rider covers, and they're amazing. One of my first cousins growing up was a big Ghost Rider fan. I'm amazed that, and I've mentioned this on the show any number of times, that you didn't get an opportunity to fully pencil like more.
Well,
series.
I did. I mean, I starting with issue 68 on Ghost Rider, I became the pencil artist for the interior of the book. Prior to that, I was kind of the semi-regular cover artist for a couple of years, which was kind of an unusual turnaround, because usually to be a cover artist, you have to kind of prove yourself by doing interiors. And I just, through kind of odd circumstances, became the cover artist for a couple of years before I took over the book. And then the book lasted until issue 81, and I did most of the issues between 68 and 81. So I had my chance being a regular monthly artist. And then after that, Marvel gave me an annual to do and a miniseries to do. And then Marvel asked me to come back on staff and be a full editor. And I decided I wanted a real normal life, not the life of a freelance artist. So I decided I'll take the 9-to-5 job and put the artwork aside for now. By being on staff, that gave me the opportunity to get involved with Transformers, and eventually gave me the opportunity to write Transformers, because as a full-time staff editor, there was no way I could draw a monthly book. But writing a monthly book was not that big a challenge. Writing takes a lot less time, at least for me, than drawing. So I was able to continue being an editor as well as writing a monthly book once I got Transformers.
Let me spin off of that, what you were saying there, Bob, with another question. With your many different roles in comics that you've had as the writer, an artist, inker, colorist, letterist, editor, and
No letter, never lettered.
Never lettered? Oh, okay. With that, then, what interests you in each of those roles? And you kind of mentioned some of the challenges, but what was a challenge in each role?
Well, as I said, I got involved in comics initially wanting to be an artist. My first job there was an entry-level position as an editorial assistant for the Marvel British department, which was a reprint department for the British marketplace. And that allowed me to eventually move up to some freelance artwork and so on and so forth. But the great thing about Marvel is if you showed you had talent, at least back then, if you showed you had talent, you'd get opportunities. People would recognize your talent. So eventually I got the opportunity to draw a Ghost Rider cover, and that led to more Ghost Rider covers. And then eventually when I got on staff, I got the opportunity to write these bios and come up with these names for Transformers. And that led to me coming up with more bios and more names until I came up with about 250 of them over the 5 years or so that I worked on it. And during that time, I also got the opportunity first to edit the book and then to write the book. So again, like if you're there and you prove that you have the drive and the talent to do something, somebody will recognize it in you who can give you an opportunity. And that was my experience. So I always wanted to try different things. Like after I was drawing for a while, I got on staff. I started taking an interest in learning to write the books. And I was able to write comics for a number of years. So it was a great place to not only work but to develop your skills while you were working.
Yeah, definitely. I will take a question from one of our Crusader Club members, and they asked. They were curious that if there were any characters that you wanted to use more, but Hasbro kind of prevented it. If there were any changes you wanted to make, or I guess wasn't able to go ahead and enact those.
Well, Hasbro only prevented me from using characters by default. And what I mean by that is Hasbro never told me you have to stop writing stories that, featuring Optimus Prime or Blaster or Ravage or whatever. They never said that. What they did say was, we're introducing another 20 toys for the holiday season. You need to create their names, write their biographies, and introduce them in the comic book.
Oh,
so
is that all?
You're introducing another 20 characters. You don't have room to continue using the characters that you've been featuring the past year or so, which created a lot of challenges for me as a writer, because I had to figure out how to bring these new characters into this storyline, because up until now the storyline's been fairly self-contained or whatever. And I had to come up. That's how I came up with things like the Space Bridge and the Creation Matrix and all these different ways to introduce more characters into the storyline. But it also kind of created like a lot of burnout, because I'd be developing a character, enjoying writing that character's arc, and then I really would have to find a way to get him off the stage and make room for somebody else. So it's kind of frustrating. Like, if you're the Spider-Man writer, you know that you're going to be writing Spider-Man every month. Peter Parker Spider-Man, he'll be in the book every month. With Transformers, it was constantly shifting around because of all the new characters Hasbro needed to introduce.
Yeah, that's got to be a daunting thing to do and task to do all the time. And then, like you said, finding different ways of clearing the playing field a little bit.
Exactly.
To do stuff. Let me ask you, we just read issue 50.
Yeah.
Seems like there was some clearing that was being done in that.
Yes, exactly.
Like setting the stage again for the next.
Yeah. So I periodically, I think, especially 50 being like the special issue number 50.
Yeah.
I use that to like clear out a lot of characters. There were just so many characters. I think if you remember the cover for, I think it was that issue, or maybe a couple issues earlier, like it showed 50 little tiny Transformers fighting each other on the cover. Too many of them. But yeah, clearing them out, making a big moment for the fans could hopefully be really excited by it and shocked by it, how many characters were eliminated. But really, there's to clear the deck so I can bring in new characters. And my feeling about Transformers was always, even though they're living beings, they're mechanical, and so they could always be repaired. And frequently they were.
Yeah, especially in the case of Optimus Prime.
I really got rid of him for quite a while.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite a while. Was that?
Go ahead, Pat. Sorry.
Was that like your decision, or was that?
Yeah, it was my decision. I think it was Optimus Prime because he was obviously a main character in the toy franchise. I ran that by Hasbro. Said, "Is this okay?" And they said, "Yeah, sure, do what you want." Because at that time, I don't know if they were producing Optimus Prime toys, so they didn't care. They were producing different toys.
They wanted to move on
from the fans' point of view, like these are characters in a story. But from Hasbro's point of view, this comic book is a platform to advertise their toys, to sell more toys. So they didn't care if I took the biggest selling toy character from 2 years ago and crushed him to little bits and pieces. They didn't care about that as long as I made room for the new toys as characters.
See, you couldn't have told me that at 9 years old.
You would have cried.
Because
this whole thing is just a sham, just to sell toys.
Oh no!
The first comic book that I ever read was Transformers 24, and where Optimus Prime died. And so,
video game, right? In a video game.
Yes. And it took me the next few months. I just knew he was coming back immediately. I thought it was so I didn't share Hasbro's mindset. You were about to say, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that. Well, first of all, again, that was a character like Optimus Prime loomed over everything for the first couple dozen issues. So let's come up with I'll try to come up with a dramatic story to get him off the stage for a while so he could bring in all these other characters. That was part of the impetus of coming up with that story. The other thing was to feature my nephew. My nephew's name is Ethan Zachary Budiansky. Zachary's the guy who was playing the video game that eventually destroyed Optimus. My nephew still likes to brag that he killed Optimus Prime.
Awesome. What a brag.
That's pretty
Seriously.
Yeah.
You should. Hopefully, he's got a floppy or something that he can hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Optimus Prime on a floppy. Yes, I know. I've gotten a lot of pushback on that floppy over the years. You know, like how could you possibly save an entire being as complex and sophisticated as Optimus Prime on a 1980s vintage floppy disk?
It's been a running gag on our show. Yeah,
But there's a lot of compression on it. That's all.
Mhm, yeah.
There's a lot of compression, and it was a big disc. Let's see. I had a couple of questions. So you talked a little bit about it, about the early days in the Marvel bullpen and whatnot, but how are toy properties generally treated back then? Like, I mean, was it like, for instance, like I was in the Air Force some years ago. In Air Force, anytime I bring up Air Force, even average civilian person be like, oh, it was the Chair Force. And you just have to take and roll with it. Were properties or toy properties treated like that at Marvel, or was it just the same as any other writing gig?
Well, okay, so clearly there was how do I put it? There were different levels of comic books at Marvel. So there were the mainstream Marvel superheroes that, you know, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko created all those back in the 1960s. You know, as Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, X-Men. You know, those were considered the premium books to be part of. You know, they're the most popular. You know, to write them or to draw them, those are prime books that people wanted to do. But still, the bottom line in all of this is that Marvel when I was working there, was the number one comic book company in America. So if you worked on anything at Marvel, that was great. You know, whether it was some new toy product that nobody ever heard of before that we were doing as a comic book, or whether it was whether it was Spider-Man, whatever you were working on. And as a new writer, you know, because I hadn't really written very much prior to Transformers. Transformers was a great opportunity for me, you know, to try my writing and learn on the job and get better at it. So, there's no way I would say Transformers was given the equal. On the other hand, it's like, okay, so it's a toy book. It's still valid. You know, it's still talented people were still working on it. And there was definitely a big audience for it. You know, and some of those toy books, like Micronauts, you know, eventually became like more integrated into the whole Marvel universe.
Yep.
You know, so some of them disappeared after a couple of issues. But we usually started out as a mini series, and if it took off like Transformers, it became a regular series. And if it didn't take off, it disappeared.
Gotcha. And so, somewhat along those lines, but more at the end of your Transformers run, which, you know, Pat doesn't know this, but like we know that it's coming up for us in a few issues. Like, I know now, of course, I'm sure you've been asked to come on any number of shows and talk about Transformers. So you were right now very well aware of what Transformers and your writing on it meant to a lot of people. But right after you were finished with your run, after issue, I believe it was 55,
right,
ended, what did you think about your body of work as far as the Transformers went?
I don't think anybody ever asked me that question. Well, first of all,
yeah, I got a good question.
First, I'll tell you how I felt. I felt relieved because I was trying to get off the book for probably close to a year, and my editor kept begging me to stay on the book because he didn't know who else could possibly write it. So I was, you know, as I mentioned earlier, having to introduce constantly all these new waves of characters that were coming out because the toys were coming out every year with, you know, different toys. Was quite a burden and made it less and less enjoyable for me to continue writing the book. And I wanted to make time for myself to do other things, which eventually became Sleepwalker. So I was relieved to finally be able to move along off the book. And then looking back, I don't know how much I looked back at it back then, but looking back at it now, I realized, like, you know, I did accomplish quite a bit by staying on the book for almost 50 issues. Well, I did 51 issues, but a couple of fill-ins in there. So, but, you know, I stayed on the book for several years. I developed a mythology. I introduced all these new characters and concepts, and people are still talking about these stories today. So, you know, it probably has more resonance today than it did at the time when I left the book. That I put together something that's meaningful to people, and I had a good run and some good stories scattered among them.
Fantastic. That's really all I had to ask. But John, did you want to ask? You're probably chomping at the bit to ask another question. I don't.
No, you know what? Pretty much most of my questions I had were answered throughout the course of that discussion, and I think that's as good a place as.
Yeah.
I know Maggie wanted to ask about Spanner, but
I did not.
Yes.
I just felt bad for him, okay? It was a little existential body horror.
That was a very tragic story. I was trying to pull your teardrops out of my young readers,
It worked.
Well, it worked for Maggie as an adult who read it the first time, because she points out every time the space bridge shows up, he goes, Spanner's still alive. And you find that out, right? Way to go, Blaster. Every single time. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, first of all, just thank you again, for your time. Is there anything that you want to promote or let the audience know about?
Well, these days I don't really produce new material. Like I said earlier, I do some commissions. I'm doing some sketches for a trading card company, but it's not really my projects. I'm not putting out a new book. I'm not drawing somebody's comic or anything like that. So I don't really have anything to promote. My day job has nothing to do with anything we've talked about. So it's completely different. So I don't really promote, but I will say if people want to find me for any reason, can you do a commission or something? Best way to do it is just look for me on Facebook, because I guarantee nobody else but me has my name.
Absolutely. Well, once again, Bob, just thank you so much. Thank you for few decades ago coming up with just amazing ideas that still stand the test of time today. It was just truly a pleasure talking with you, and we are all grateful. Thank you so much.
Well, I've had a lot of fun. It's nice meeting you all, and thank you for inviting me onto your show.
Oh, 100%.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bob. It was great meeting you.
Yeah. Have yourself a good evening.
Yes, you too.
And only Bob Budiansky is the only thing that could trump your triumphant return to Transformers Chronicles.
Yeah, I got overshadowed a little bit, but that's okay. I'll allow it.
But what an overshadow, right?
Yeah, I know. Totally worth it. Super cool.
I brought cheesecake.
While Pat's passing out cheesecake, I'm going to I'm going to the boilerplate so we can go ahead and wrap this show up in a somewhat orderly fashion. The purpose of this podcast will be tackling all of Marvel's Transformers comics in order, starting with issue 1 and working our way to the series end at issue 80. We will answer any questions that are brought up to the best of our ability and see how these books we loved then as a kid hold up to our eyes as an adult now. This podcast is guaranteed to be, you guessed it, more than meets the eye. So Pat, John, Maggie, let's see what the end of the Underbase saga and what a kaboom, an earth-shattering kaboom sounds like right after the promo break.
More.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
We got it all together for a brand new show. The LBC crew is here and so away we go. While the LBC crew is running from a spooky ghost, Christatos is doing what he does the most. Hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved. Hang around with the LBC crew. Oh, hey, come on, get involved till the mystery is solved. Hang around with the LBC crew. That's the podcast. LBC crew.
We now return to the Transformers.
Welcome back. The issue we'll be covering today is Transformers issue 50. And here's Maggie with the cover description.
Thanks, Delvin. So we have issue number 50, the Transformers in great big red font at the top of the cover. I'm off to a great start. Underneath it is the title Starscream Triumphant. And indeed and Optimus Prime
He's back.
is in the corner box. Oh, who has it been since?
Fortress Maximus tearing off his head in anger and or disgust.
For ages now, but we're back to Optimus Prime. Good old Optimus. We have an incredible Starscream who looks different than he's normally depicted. He's got a lot more detail all over his body, almost as if his entire body has turned into like one big microchip. He's got so much detail. He's surrounded by Kirby dots and this yellow kind of crackling energy around him. And trapped within that yellow crackling energy are a number of different Transformers, some of who I even recognize for some reason. It's a pretty epic cover.
And the only thing I want to add to that is that it looks like Starscream, while he is having all of these robots in his thrall or whatnot, looks like he's standing on top of planet Earth.
It's kind of a greeny Earth.
Earth's kind of greeny.
Copy Delvin from last
Because we're
month?
keeping it clean.
I'm going to see. I think I can name all of these Transformers.
Do you think
Go
you can?
for it.
All right. Of course, standing front and center is Starscream. Counterclockwise from him, we have Swoop, followed by Prowl. Below that is one of the Predacons, the Bull, Rampage, I believe. Below that is Soundwave. Below that appears to be Hoist, and behind him, damn it, is a Predator,
Predacon?
No, it's a Pretender. I refuse to learn any of their names. In the front, we have crap. I don't know who that is.
Nope.
You know what? Help me out, Dubbin. Who's right below Starscream's crotch?
That's not a sentence you hear very often. Yeah, that's Grimlock.
Come on. Is it Grimlock? Oh, you see, he's not in
Grimmy.
Look at I even got one. Come on.
Yes, that's right.
That's
Grimlock.
absolutely Grimlock.
Here we see, seen here dying next to
dying.
Bob Budiansky's stated favorite character, Blaster, to his left. The two of them dying as they lived near each other.
Yep.
Fortress Max is taking a shot.
Oh, that's Fort Max. There's Omega Supreme.
Omega Supreme,
Thank you.
followed by Slag,
Yep.
and then
That-
I don't know.
Not Bombshell.
So that
I think that's
impressed
Bugley.
everyone with that.
Hang on. What?
I think that's Bugley, the last one.
Ugly. Yeah.
Bugley. Okay.
And the one, the pretender that you missed was Iguanus.
All right. But I did okay.
You did okay.
You did do okay. You know, and since you're talking, John, would you like to say what you think about this cover?
This cover is incredible. This cover is probably one of the top 5 most iconic covers in Transformers comics history, any of the various issues. It's, I imagine, a whole bunch of people that weren't used to grabbing Transformers comics, but new Transformers probably picked this up because, well, it does give you exactly what it says on the tin. This one more than passes the Maggie seal of approval, I imagine, for depicting something that definitely happens in this issue.
That's right.
Yeah, this is great. This is an epic cover for an epic size issue and an epic event. I love this cover.
Maggie, it seems like you are in full agreement with your lesser half, but is there anything else that you want to add?
It's a very striking cover. Like Starscream, in the way that he's been done with all this extra detailing on his body and like his fingers are kind of drawn like claws. He's almost grotesque in a way, but not in a way that like creeps me out. But I'm like, what the heck is going on here? It's intriguing. It's striking, I think, is a good word to describe it. It's a great cover, clearly.
It's funny that you mentioned, or we were talking about in our, let's just call it cold opening, Pat mentioned about, taking over the world and basically taking like a supplement, like a steroid or whatever. And interestingly, if you see a juiced up guy or juiced up girl, and you start seeing all of those striations in their muscles, you start seeing the veins in a way, sort of Pat, sort of,
just like
I'm
Pat.
working on it.
You just started, and with Starscream looks a little bit geared up. He looks a little bit roided out, and sure enough, because he went from being a robot, which is of course made out of microchips and et cetera, mechanical name, this and that, to just now, you could see literally all of it on his skin, as it were. So definitely devastating, and none of the robots that are around him look very happy. And then he must be giant because Fortress Maximus is a very big robot and he looks puny and tiny compared to Starscream and how huge he is. Pat, what do you think?
Well, I think you guys kind of said it all too. This cover is a lot going on. Just the detailed art in this, like Maggie said, is, man, to draw that, Jose Delbo drawing that, I would hate to be his inker. And we know, our resident inker, Jared Elbrick, the yard sale artist, go and check him out. He would say that is a lot of inking that you need to do on that character. And man, I don't know how long that would take somebody to do that, but hats off to them on this cover. It says what it needs to say.
It does. And here's something that it's a spoiler of sorts, but not really. Issue 51, and I think issue 52 as well, were drawn by Jose Delbo. He drew the cover of this, drew a feature-length book and more. And then, I'm still doing 51. Like, what? Excuse me? Anyway, so we've already talked about the cover. Let's rate the thing. On Transformers Chronicles, we rate things on a scale of 1 to 10, like the tech specs of old, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, to describe what we think about the cover. Let's start with Pat again. Pat, 1 through 10. What would you rate?
Well, Devin, I hate to be this person, but I'm going to have to do it. It's a 10. I'm going to start us off right at the top, see if anybody wants to top me off or just go under me.
John, are you going to? Let's see. And Maggie?
Also, me too, 10. Me too.
The cat
here's the
10.
Cat says 10.
John and Maggie's cat says Gatsby.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Heck yeah.
Gatsby says 10, as does Red.
Gatsby gave it a 10. Okay, I'm not just taking this time just to take it, I promise. When I first looked at it, I was like, I did not know whether or not I wanted to 10 the cover or not. I was thinking maybe a 9, but the thing that changed my mind, other than, all of your obvious enthusiasm is, that classic cover test that we use for Longbox Crusade. Would I hang this on my wall? Yes. and so would I hang it on the wall? Yes. Did I remember this cover? As soon as we were approaching it? Yes, immediately. So, and then probably the thing that just was the icing on the cake is it went back to that classic Marvel Transformers logo of Optimus Prime with the laser rifle and pointing at the cover, which is just the coolest. So yeah, all of those reasons and probably more. This cover is an absolute 10. Jose Delbo and Mr. Bulinati should take a bow, even though you didn't know who drew it and did the inks, but you're about to anyway, because Pat's about to read the cover credits and the issue credits for this issue.
All right. Well, Delvin, thank you. And I'm glad you asked. Let's go ahead and get to the cover credits. For this issue, we are covering Transformers number 50. Woo! 50 issues we are into this series. Its on sale date was November 22nd, 1988. Its cover date was March 1989. Cover price is $1.50. Well, of course, it's a little bit more because it's a giant-sized issue. Story is by Bob Budiansky. Pencils go to Jose Delbo. Inks, Danny Bulinati. Colorist is Nelson Yamtov. Letter is Rick L. Parker. Editor is Don Daly. Cover credits go to Jose Delbo and Danny Bulinati. This is all thanks to Mike's Amazing World and tfwiki.net. Back to you, Delvin.
Thanks, Pat. It is synopsis time.
It is a world transformed, where things are not what they seem. It is the world of the Transformers.
The Transformers, more than meets the eye. Autobots wage their battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons. Transformers.
The Transformers from Marvel Comics.
The title of this issue was Dark Star. So I like this music group called Starset. And they have a song called Dark on Me, where they use the phrase from the title of this issue. Light the night up, you're my dark star, and now you're falling away. I could say that loosely describes the start of this issue. Well, maybe about a third of the way in, but we have to get there. I'll move quickly. The Autobots find Buster, nearly frozen to death. The Decepticons find the Autobots since they were close by. They fight, but thanks to Buster, they realize Starscream has duped them all so he can get the underbase. The combined forces actually catch up to Starscream just a bit late, as he had begun to absorb the powers of the underbase. The underbase continues on his way to Earth, but the combined teams now have to deal with an immensely powered Starscream who is vowed to take over Earth. There's another lyric from the song. In the dead of night, you went dark on me. And that is a very, very appropriate way to describe the rest of the issue. Starscream tries to take over 3 major world cities, and the Autobots and Decepticons, with Optimus Prime staying behind for some reason, try to stop him, but Starscream essentially exterminates a lot of Transformers. Name one. You probably got them. A couple of Decepticons escaped, but were more curious as to why Optimus stayed behind. While it appears Optimus may have tried to take the underbase's powers for himself, he was using a makeshift satellite to absorb the underbase's power to essentially give all of the power to Starscream. Why would he do this? Because as we found out in issue 48, and even though no one believed him when he said it 4 million years ago or today, Optimus Prime knew the power of the underbase was too much for one being to hold. Starscream absorbed all of the power. Starscream perished, but what a way to go. And with that, we are talking about Transformers issue 50, pluses, minuses, goods, bads. Gonna have a discussion about it and stuff. I gotta have a newcomer's perspective, and I'm gonna start with Pat on this one because Pat has been along on this ride, the whole time. Was fortunate enough to not have to take a hiatus, and so we have talked about part 1, 2, 3, and now this is the culmination. Yes. Thank you, of the storyline. And so, Pat, I want your impression. Like, what are you thinking about Transformers 50? How it all ended?
Well, I just got to say, wow. This ended in, is it really a 4-parter or is it a 5-parter? This being a bigger double issue, this felt pretty big in size to go through, but it didn't read that.
Not at all.
Not at all. So I was very into this issue because, like you said, it was a big culmination of just the whole arc coming together. And wow, you really see what the power, or at least maybe a glimpse of what the power of the underbase really is and what it could do. And wow, just turns a person mad, right?
Yeah.
And if you got it all, it blows you up.
One of the things that it was one of those I mentioned last episode about a bluff statement, a bottom line up front statement. And in Transformers 48, like when we found out what the underbase was, they said it right in Transformers issue 48. This thing is too powerful for anyone, one being to hold. It will destroy you. They said it then. They said it. And yet, like, you had Rat-Bat that was just like, oh, that underbase is mine. And then Scorponok was like, this base is mine. And then Optimus Prime was like, are you listening? And Rat-Bat, you saw the tapes, dude. Anyway, it's more than just you and me on this show. There's also John and Maggie. Let's see. I know John's read this before, but I know Maggie probably hasn't and is catching up. I'm interested to see especially what our newcomers think on this. Maggie, what did you think about 50?
It's a really big, like, splashy, exciting climax to a story. And, like, 50 is such a big milestone. And it's clearly setting up for, like, the next phase of storytelling that's going to happen. We're obviously going to get a lot of new characters introduced to us. To replace the millions that have died in this issue. And the thing of it is it is mostly like just Transformers dying on every page, like just getting completely wiped out by Starscream. But there's enough plot still going on too that it's not just that.
It made sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's It was a good read. It was, and the art, if I can just say, is like no holds barred, amazing throughout the whole thing. It's really good. Mm-hmm. I was really taken in by a lot of the art, and I actually found myself like taking my time. There's a couple panels in here that I particularly liked. It was a heck of an issue. Give us a couple. The one that like my favorite panel, and it's such a small one, but it's when Starscream like it falls into the side of some kind of, it's when he gets blasted by the underbase stuff, and they're saying like, maybe in that second he absorbed more power than we realized, and it's just that tiny little panel of his face, and it's all glowing, his mouth's open. So cool. Yeah, there it is. That's the one.
Where his eyes are going out like that, like he's a vampire-y looking. It's like,
it's really cool. So dramatic, and like it's a little scary, like the whole in space, no one can hear you scream kind of thing, and Starscream. I don't know. I enjoyed this issue thoroughly. It's got everybody in it. Not everybody dies. It's mostly Hamlet, but a few people survive. For anybody listening, that's content page 18, by the way. The right middle panel of that, where it looked like Optimus Prime had taken out Starscream for good, but even Optimus Prime was like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, Optimus was right. Let's go to John. I know John, being an experienced person, still has, emotions and things to say about Transformers 50.
I do. I'm not sure how to go about some of it. I'm going to stick to, I have several large criticisms of this book. I'm going to wait to do them because I also have several huge praises of this book. One that I really enjoy, it's rather subtle. On the same content page you're talking about, in the upper left corner, it shows all of the silhouettes of the Transformers standing there, looking out they're looking out the big window screen. Yeah, it's that is very much meant, I think, to look like a similar panel in Transformers #1 of all things, where they were standing there looking at the big screen in the Ark, showing them all of the images from Earth. With Optimus Prime standing there, and you can see, and it's really cool because it's different Transformers, but you can tell who they are, the shadows, just because of how their guns are. That's Fort Max there. There's Omega Supreme, that's Optimus Prime. Ratbat in the foreground. Yep. That's some good stuff. And it looks like it's a lot of inking involved, basically, to get that. And this Jose Delbo kind of, for me, peaks right here. This is the best. He's never better than this. This is the best he gets at this point. He is, as I say over and over again, firing on all cylinders. But we've watched him since the beginning on this thing just really come around and turn it into just getting his real take on this issue, putting his mark down, and just drawing some amazing stuff. There's really not a bad panel in this. There's really not. And I wanted to mention before I forget, because I will later, one of the reasons Starscream is attacking Rio de Janeiro is because that is where Jose Delbo either was from, or his family was from, so he wanted to draw it. Awesome. I didn't know that.
I was wondering why. I was wondering why they chose that. Like, that's an odd place to choose, but
like a little random. But okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, that does make sense though. Source material. Let's do a second round. Pat, what do you have for round 2?
Well, Maggie already kind of gushed about the art, and I wanted to do it as well too. And just, oh man, like Maggie said, I could just sit here and stare at these panels all day, and they were just telling the story for you by itself. And I think that's what made this such a great and interesting and I don't want to say fast read, but I took my time with it, but it wasn't long and drawn out. So just Jose with adding all these characters in, and there's backgrounds as well too that are happening in these. And then the colors just make, it's typical as 80 coloring, but they still make it work. And some of these pop out and are interesting for this. So there's a lot I want to talk about in this one. So I don't want to take anybody else's thunder on this, but just the artwork really sold it for me.
Well, we've talked about artwork, and there's nothing wrong with talking about Mr. Delbo's artwork and Mr. Bulinati. as well, and the colorist whose name I'm going to blank on right now. But yeah, Nelson Yomtov.
Oh, I thought you were doing a joke. No.
He can't live without your love and affection.
Yeah. So is that Nelson? Pat?
Yes. I'm going back to a way old joke from.
So, there's nothing wrong with talking about the artwork team. And I did remember the thing that I was going to say. And that is one of the affects of the artwork was, if you noticed, from the time that Starscream took the powers of the underbase, even right before he fully absorbed the powers of the underbase, he was almost turning into this vampiric thing. He kept morphing with that amount of power that was surging through him. And you could tell it was having an effect on him. And even though he still had most of his faculties about him, he had clearly been changed into something a little bit different. And that was even before he fully absorbed the powers. The art team did a great job of that. Mm-hmm. So we have talked about art. Pat, John, you want to say something? You got a thought.
Yeah, I did want to say one thing. It is art related, but I do have to, just because everyone's going to go, what? I got to take my hat off to Nelson Yomtov for page 13. There's some great coloring in it, in terms of just showing the glow of the underbase, about how it's reflecting off of Starscream, and just the entire way, the ways using colors just to do space, the different blacks, purples, and things. Big fan. Yeah, I give credit where I see credit. And there it is. Now that all of you are done from your heart attacks,
I still think you would fight them in a dark alley.
But I do that to every creator I find in a dark alley. It's part of that whole monkey process. All right. Yes, this is beautifully done. It's an interesting and fun story that goes, through it, and it's a good read. That said, when I was a kid, this caused me to stop reading this comic until well into the next guy whose name I'm blanking.
Furman?
Simon Furman. Thank you. That's why she's the greater half, folks.
That's right.
I get it now, and we'll get some more perspective at some point over the fact of, and we've said it in the past, it's been pretty obvious that Mr. Budiansky is a bit burnt out by this point. And this is hilarious. As an adult, look at this. Is a hilarious for me to see this. That said, and for him, it may have been, these might have been just robots, but some of these characters who went through a lot get tossed aside real quick, like Blaster, Goldbug, boom, dead. And I think it's just strange to me that people with that much and that's part of a history got just dispatched so quickly. I always have a problem with the killing off of a lot of characters for effect issues, and this was the first one I ever saw. There's one in G.I. Joe I despise just as much because of how it's done. It just kind of cheapens the death of all of it, but it's the whole idea of one death is a tragedy, 10,000 deaths is a statistic. All of the people dying through here, does not get a chance to really stick, and it's just, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead. So that for me, I didn't like. Your mileage may vary on that. I mean, if you don't care, and a lot of the deaths are super cool, and I like seeing it, but in general, I don't like that sort of thing. While I'm on the subject, there's two weird things, though. So if the underbase doesn't affect organic things, it sure as hell tore through that one planet and nuked every organic thing on it earlier in that little, here goes the underbase.
It did blow up a planet.
Yeah, that's easily explained.
Yeah, that's whatever. But the other one is, so if the whole idea is Starscream absorbs the whole thing, he explodes, why in the name of Primus did Prime shoot him in the first place when he was absorbing it? He shoots him, knocks him off so that he can fly to Earth, kill a bunch of people, then fly back to where he just was, fill up on the rest of it, and then blow up. Maybe Prime was mad at people.
Now, that one might be a little bit more difficult, but what I would say to that is they did think that they could take him out before there was too much power absorbed or anything, because they shot him with one of the base guns. It wasn't like just Optimus Prime's laser rifle, there was like a huge laser cannon that came from the Decepticon base. And so
I'll totally buy it that it was just a straight up error on their part, because it's one thing to know about, something, the power cosmic, which he actually accidentally calls it one time here, because that's essentially what this is. He becomes a Galactus level power.
Sure.
With this underbase. And
or Phoenix.
Exactly. Dark Phoenix kind of, or Phoenix. It's one thing to have read up on it and to know it. It's another thing to truly know what's going to happen if he gets nailed by it. And Prime, might have shot it. So there, we neutralized my only complaints on it, besides the massive deaths. That's all I got this round.
I'm going to add something, because I'll give my perspective of what I thought of it as a kid. And of course, like that many characters or Transformers that were passed away, I was definitely shocked. I remember that, like, are they coming back? Especially because like all of our heroes at that point were rather pointedly taken out.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Goldbug was like, "You don't do my friends like that," and he literally grabbed Goldbug and just power surged him till he exploded. I'm like, yeah.
I know. You know what my favorite one is, though? I'm sorry. Apparently, sometime since we saw them last, somebody went and found the little Throttlebot cars, right? And then built them new chassis, put their brains back in there, and said, "All right, good to go. Starscream's coming. Go get him, guys." Dead.
only to be blown up. They would have done just as good at being the toy cars. What'd you ask, Pat?
The throttle.
That was Haikyuu that put them back together,
wasn't it? Optimus Prime said, "I built them stronger than ever before. Yeah. Let's hope that they survive."
Yeah, he was using Haikyuu to help them.
Probably. And then the next panel, dead. Dead. And
I'll go to as we talk about this, I actually kind of like this. And I'm glad in our interview with Bob, I got the answer that I was kind of looking for. And I'll spoil it here just because we're talking about it. To me, once I saw all this happen, I'm like, man, he seems like he's kind of clearing house. And he's this is of course a big issue. You're clearing everything. You're getting things ready for the next the next series to go on. It's issue 50. And that's the way I felt, but I was all right with it. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's set some of these characters aside for a little bit and let's see what new ones we got. And I was kind of looking forward to it. In the sense that, it's like, yeah, there's too many players on this field. Let's knock them down a little bit.
One of the things I did like that Bob said was, they can always come back. I mean, sure enough, after some of the creatures who were seemingly irreparably damaged in issue 49 were already back for issue 50, only to get killed again, looking at you, Predacons. but that was kind of speaking to Bob's point. It's like, yes, they can be pretty horribly mangled, but yes, they also can be repaired. So it isn't necessarily the end of the world to take one out. I was just going to finish my thought for, just me as a kid. I do remember being shocked about the amount of deaths. I was wondering, again, how they were going to come back. And then I mentioned just the pointed deaths of Goldbug, and then Blaster. Blaster was taken out up close and personal. So was Grimlock. Grimlock was taken out up close and personal too. So those are three bots that basically carried most of the first 50, seemingly gone forever. Don't know. Maybe we'll see him again, maybe not. That time will tell the tale on that story. Maggie, I have not heard from you from around 2. Was there anything that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, I kind of like that it's a story of hubris with Starscream. He gets everything that he ever wanted, just like at the end of Dr. Horrible. And it kills him because like an Infinity Stone, you're not supposed to wield this thing all on your own. And it's just so very Starscream to finally get everything he wants and then to have it all fall apart, literally, because he explodes.
Right.
Because I love Starscream as a character. He's such a great, foil and lapdog to Megatron and everything, and just to have him go out in this massive explosion, it was pretty cool. It was pretty badass. If he's gonna go out, he's gonna go out big.
Absolute blaze of glory, wasn't it? Like, I mean, because at one point, he can always say that if the Starscream of this Transformers universe could always write, you know what? At one point, I was definitely the king. I was definitely the most powerful bot in the universe.
I like it how he was just wasting the fools, and he would just, oh, you think you're better than me? Watch this. And then he turned it around and say something, just this and that, and just blah. And
he was living his best friggin' life, just killing everybody. And I get John's point, like killing swaths of characters is a little alarming. In a toy based comic book, I think it makes sense that it seems like he was clearing the way for a new load of characters to come along, and you can't possibly keep track of all of them all of the time. There's just no way. So it didn't like horrify me. It was kind of funny, like a little like over the top violence, almost how sometimes it can just be like so over the top that it becomes funny. It was a little bit like that.
Yeah. So it was in essence, it was the Transformers comic equivalent of Transformers the movie.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask, is when this came out in March of '89.
Well,
I was going to say, when did that movie come out?
Yeah, the movie came out, I think, a couple years prior, right?
So years before this. Yeah. So twice now, children of the 80s have had their characters ripped out from underneath them, just taken away and thrown in the slag heap.
Oh, don't think we didn't say something like that out loud several times. This one hit my brother a lot harder than me.
Did it?
How you doing, Jason? Hope you're feeling good. It's so much that later on, no real spoilers, there's a cover, which is an homage to a classic X-Men cover that says, several issues from now, that says, not a hoax, not a dream. In this issue, an Autobot dies. And my brother walked by and took a look. He goes, oh, there's a freaking surprise. And just walked away.
Optimus dies so many times. Well, he doesn't die in this one.
He doesn't. He lives through this. Everybody, Bumblebee gets / Goldbug goes through one of his men. He dies quite a bit. But yeah, Jason never read a Transformers comic again after this. He was done. No, that's not. He came back and did eventually, but he was kind of done with them after this. He was like, I didn't read this to watch everybody get killed. I've got a movie I can watch over there if I need.
Yeah, if I want to see everybody die, I got a movie I can go watch.
I would have to say I do like with Prime, he does have a thorn that'll bring him down a little bit is when the engine's not with him. That he's got a bigger weakness now than what he had before. So I kind of like that, but that can also be a little bit tropey, and hopefully I guess we'll see through the rest of these issues to come. Is that always going to be the trope? Oh no, I lost my power source. Now I have to go and try to get up with this guy, and something happens to his power source. He's not going to be able to get by, but
it's kind of funny. I think he'll be okay.
Yep. I mean, it's Optimus. He'll be okay.
I mean, he's got these guns. Can he just shoot?
Yeah.
He does have those guns. Like, he does not use those shoulder guns enough, I don't think.
No, I know. He's got those guns. He's beef, just like I'm trying to be. Beef.
But, keep working at it, Pat. But, what I appreciated his reasoning. And of course, you had Haikyuu that was working on the satellite, and everything. And sure enough, that's when Ratbat swooped in and it's like, yeah, we took, your guys' shuttles back to this base. That's what we're undetected, blah, blah, blah. So it worked out very well as a plot device of Optimus Prime being occupied somewhere else. And then, unfortunately, getting blasted by Scorponok. But at least he was strong enough to survive that blast. Ratbat wasn't.
Ooh, yeah.
Ratbat was not. So, yeah.
So who's going to be the big player? Who's going to be the big Decepticon?
Well, who is going to be the big Decepticon? Looks like Scorponok's that dude. I mean, Scorponok was a leader, right?
Yeah.
And
he was.
And there were two.
I'm actually glad he got to take Ratbat out. That was pretty satisfying because they kind of set it up to make it look like Starscream was going to stab him in the back, but Starscream didn't even care about him. He just wanted the underbase, and Scorponok saw his moment and took it. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. He took it that was very Decepticon-esque. Like, you think that this is yours? And so yeah. All right, y'all. A lot of robots that passed away, and Starscream had his day, and until he didn't. And is there anything we missed? Can I move on to the next segment, or is there anything else that y'all wanted to bring up?
Are we gonna see the spacefaring tropical island anymore? The Decepticon base?
No, they blew it up.
Did it get blown up with everything else?
Yeah, big old page.
That breaks my heart. though.
Yeah.
It's like the best base.
That would be like a
tropical island.
that would be like a cool model to have, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Huh?
Like a little model like that. That'd be cool to have.
Yeah.
It would be. Yeah, Starscream threw a ship into another ship. It's safe to say that both of those ships are probably out of commission for good, unless somebody comes and revives them for whatever reason. But to my knowledge, I think that's the last we see of the island ship.
Mm-hmm. That was a cool thing, though.
It was a good idea.
Rest in peace, island.
Yeah.
Rest in pieces, am I right?
Hey, so now's the time for us to talk about Who Has Touch. Where we talk about which character in the Starscream? Is it Starscream?
I mean, basically, yeah.
I'm giving
Since you came right out and said it.
I'm giving it to Scorponok, though.
Oh,
for the
yeah,
reasons
that's
stated
right.
before.
Man,
Yeah,
actually doing too.
He's the only one that he comes out the best in this at the end of the day. He's now the leader of the whatever Decepticons are remaining. He has his own problems, but that's a tomorrow problem right now.
Today's Scorponok is doing all
show,
right.
you got to do what Decepticons want to do. He took out the leader in a moment of weakness, and now he's in charge. He gets to put forward whatever plan he has.
Mm-hmm.
Scorponok for the win. Plus, he's drawn probably better than he's ever been in this issue. He looks so great.
Pat, you had a different thought as well. I assumed everyone had said Starscream, but I was incorrect.
You know, I do want to say Starscream, but I want to talk about somebody we didn't talk about. Buster.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the boys. Yeah.
Buster Witwicky. He had the touch, I think, because he came up with the scheme at the end to say, you know, and I like this because he even said my word. He got duped and he reduped the duper.
Yeah.
That's a
you know
double
what I mean?
dupe.
It's a double dupe. And if you can do a double dupe, man, you're all in it. And Buster did it. He was able to dupe Starscream again to make him sucker and come up after the underbase again to get all the power
Gotcha.
this time.
Mm-hmm.
So to sum up, initially Buster was duped, but then he recovered.
Yes.
But then he duped Starscream with the dupe that he was duped with.
Yeah.
Everybody
totally, he totally dupalicious.
Got it. Okay. If we're not picking Starscream, then I would pick Optimus Prime then, because Optimus had a lot of right calls on this one. Like, yes, like, I mean, the smart thing to do was to go save Buster. They did that and got attacked. But just as you mentioned, Buster was the one that kind of got them out of that big fight with the Decepticons that the Autobots may have lost. But then at that point, from that point on, Optimus was right. Optimus said, look, we do need to stop Starscream from getting this. No one needs to absorb the powers of the underbase because it's not meant for one bot. And then he made the decision to stay behind and not just attacking the battlefield, which put him in a position that he was acting more like a general and not like a foot soldier. Mm-hmm. And I like that idea a ton. So, and sure enough, he had the winning strategy that wound up being what carried the day and stopping the insanely planetary threat at that point of Starscream. So I'll give it to Optimus Prime. And with that,
I have been a fool, made mistakes, monumental ones.
But I am just a broken machine, and I do things that...
We talked about touch, and someone had to be out of touch. We talk about the character that was the worst in the book and just died in the issue. Wait, that does not narrow it down at all. In the segment called Less Than Meets the Eye, Pat, do you have anybody that was particularly less than meets the eye for you?
Yeah, I guess I'll go with Rat Bat on this one. You know, he got fooled and got his overconfidence is what did him in.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Maggie, was there anyone to you less than meets the eye?
Oh, I think Rat Bat's about as close as you're gonna get. Nobody really jumped out at me. Like everybody just died. I guess if I had to say anything, I'd like to pour one out for all the dead Transformers who died so that others may live.
Yeah, poor can of oil.
Just don't pour it in their circuitry there in my electrical. John, who was less than meets the eye to you?
Rat Bat's a good choice, but I'm gonna have to give it to our good friend Omega Supreme
for dying like a chump.
who finally, just because this is the last time I'm going to be able to do this, just for going out. He finally gets the moment. He finally does what he's supposed to do, and he does it. He protects it. He shoots. Nothing.
Nothing. And then Starscream got his revenge too. It's like, oh yeah, you scrapped me, now I scrapped you. So it wasn't like a double dupe, Pat. It was more like a double scrap. Maybe he was scrapped first, then he got better.
Yeah.
Then he scrapped the person who scrapped him. So maybe
scrap.
Yep. I don't necessarily have one. I think Rat Bat's a decent enough choice. As well. And you know what? The tie I'll give it to, believe it or not, would be Rat Bat / Scorponok. And the reason that I'm giving it to both of them is that as much as they talked about how Optimus Prime was a coward, they immediately abandoned that plan. To go and back to the Ark. And you could say that, oh yeah, they wanted to see what Optimus Prime was up to, but they did exactly what they accused Optimus Prime of, which was leaving the field of battle to presumably go steal power. The only difference is those two actually were trying to steal the power. Optimus Prime had a plan to divert the power to Starscream. So I'll give it to the two deserters from the battlefield. They were not acting like generals. They were just acting like chumps. It's time to rate the book, Transformers issue 50, the end of the Underbase saga. Did it meet all of your hopes and dreams, everybody? John, did it? Was it everything that you wanted and then some?
Well, it did meet some dreams, as it were. No, the thing is I complain about it, but I probably read this comic more than any other Marvel comic in terms of just reading it over and over and over again. It's a gorgeous thing. Despite all my problems with it, it's an amazing story. I'm giving it a 10. I'm just going to give it a 10 out of 10. We are rating it, right?
Yes. 10 out of 10. We are rating it, and you rated it a 10 out of 10. That's a double 10 of sorts. Pat, what would you rate it?
I will rate this a 10, and it did meet my expectations of it all. I think it definitely exceeded it with going through the other three parts to this. I was like, first part I was like, okay. Second part, Now I see where it all came to and what happened. Pulling all four together like this, definitely a 10 series in itself.
Maggie?
I see no reason also not to give it a 10. I know I've been out of the loop for a little while, but it nonetheless was a heck of an issue. And I remember when I finished reading it the other day, I just looked at John. I was like, holy moly, what a ride. Like, that was intense.
Like,
Yeah.
She was quiet for the entire time. She just started reading it and just was in it. Didn't make a noise, didn't say a thing.
It took a minute, and I appreciated that about this. It was an experience reading it, and the art is just, it was cool. Yeah, no reason not to give it a 10.
I'm with the group. I'm very grateful and glad that, I mean, it was 1989. 12-year-old me looked at that book, and like it left enough of an indentation and imprint that I would want to look at it again. And then you come back and you look at it again, and it was magnificent. Like if I were an adult back in the 80s reading this, I would have thought this was a well-crafted, well-drawn, excellent build-up to a four-parter that, I mean, the payoff was immense and is leaving you with all sorts of questions as far as what the future is going to be. So I think it's everything that you could possibly want in a series within a series. It was fantastic. 10 out of 10. With that, we can and never will leave you without a segment of the show that John does called Transformer Spotlight, where he discusses a particular Transformer which was featured in today's issue. All yours, John.
All right. I'm pretty sure I did this guy already, but I can't remember. We're finally getting to the point where there's so many I can't remember off the top of my head. So I'm going to do Starscream because you kind of have to for this one. But instead of like going through the standard like stats and tech specs and stuff, because we've done that before and actually read his stats as recently as last week, I'm just going to ask everybody to give me what your favorite or just a favorite Starscream moment. It can be from any Transformers medium. It can be from the comics here. If you can't think of anything, you can pick one out of this comic, or from the cartoons, from the Michael Bay movies, if you somehow feel that way.
How dare you? How dare you?
Hey, I gotta keep it open. Yeah, right.
You absolutely do not.
Nobody's saying that. All right, so starting with starting with you, Delvin. You rarely get to go first on that. So what's a moment that stands out for you?
The first one that I thought of was Transformers the movie, and sure enough, as Maggie expertly used the word hubris. Hubris is a great word to describe Starscream. He thinks he's the best ever and the most powerful ever and the most cunning ever, and sometimes he is. But he always seems to pay for it, doesn't he? And sure enough, he sees an opportunity in the movie and like threw Megatron out of Astro Train and like I'm the leader and freaking got a crown on his head. And then Galvatron came back and turned the man into ashes. Yeah. So like he was the top of the mountain and had his coronation. And so at one moment he was king, and then it all went away. That's my moment.
This is bad comedy. That is.
I remember that. I remember that line. I know that line. That's
Pat, what about you? What do you think about Mr. Scream?
Well, I think he's a really cool character, and I really like the jets, the Seekers in these, just because my love of Robotech and to see the jets turned into robots like that, and Starscream just being the kind of leader that he wants to be. We haven't seen him a lot earlier in the beginning, but what I really liked was the issue before this one, where he was just setting up his plot and he was just letting it turn and turn. And I thought this was a good Starscream moment of just the mind of Starscream and how he could technically think about all this stuff, but yet he can be the whole plotter. But in the end, once he starts doing it, then things start to screw up for him.
What about you, Maggie?
One of the first things that came to mind for Starscream is in the IDW Phase 2 books, and I think we just covered this one where he's in a prison cell with Megatron. I'm not going to give a lot of context there. He's in a prison cell with Megatron, and he's feeling pretty fine about himself until Megatron smiles and he wigs out, and he immediately wants to be released. It kind of made me think of Young Frankenstein.
Oh yeah,
when he's in the room, yeah, mommy. It made me giggle because it's such a perfect example of Starscream's relationship with Megatron and how even just a tiny little bit of confidence, and just the slightest bit of a chance, Starscream will take it and become way too overly arrogant and sure of himself and overly confident. And the slightest, hint from Megatron that he actually has a plan, and Starscream crumbles.
Oh, exactly.
In the face of that adversity in particular. It's such a great example of their relationship.
Right. If I can just tag on to that, just the entire story arc of the first year of Robots in Disguise that we've been covering has been pretty much all Starscream. Just the rise and now sudden fall, meteoric rise. Then the meteoric rise again that will happen. It's if you like Starscream and you want to see a different take on Starscream, it's a great one to read. We've been covering over on the Rod Pod. And it's just, what if Starscream got everything he ever wanted? I mean, the status quo changes and do it, and he was all ready to go, actually act, putting aside his worst qualities, not letting him trip it up, gets everything he needs, and then Megatron shows up and just crumbles. But I think my favorite Starscream moment is, I think it's just summed up in the clip that I use all the time for this. It just
I Starscream, now you're the leader.
Megatron has fallen. He just trips over. I Starscream, right? I'm now your leader.
Yes.
Megatron has fallen! I, Starscream, am now your leader! Decepticons, follow me!
That sums him up. He is just chomping at the bit, and he's gonna go. And that's our guy Starscream. I'm gonna miss him here. I don't remember if Furman brings
I got to
him back
assume he
or
stays
not.
dead for a minute.
He stays dead for a long time, if not completely.
He did get to come back as a blue Force ghost, though, in the movie.
Oh yeah, in the TV show.
Or the TV show, whichever.
But my honorable mention before I hand this back for my favorite Starscream moment, I don't remember which cartoon it was, but he was fighting against Megatron. Megatron was holding him over an edge of a cliff and indicating that there was nothing he could do that Megatron couldn't. Starscream responds, I can fly, and transforms into a blade and flies off, leaving Megatron to look on in sadness because, as we know, Megatron can't fly. Back to you, Delvin.
You don't have to end with just such blatant lies, but it's okay. It's time for a promo break.
The Transformers will return after these messages.
You are receiving a transmission from the Rod Pod. Upload pending.
Stand by for soundtrack transfer.
I am Maggie.
And I am John.
And we are trapped, hurtling through space in a ship shaped like Rodimus's head.
The ship, for reasons we haven't been able to determine, contains the entire run of the IDW Transformers Phase 2 comic, which chronicle the events following the end of the war between the Autobots and Decepticons. So we figure we may as well read them all in order and report our findings to you. Stand by. Stand by.
Upload complete. Now.
The Rod Pod. Look for us at marriedwcomics.libsyn.com, at iTunes, at Stitcher, or wherever good podcasts can be found.
So, till all are one.
Till all are one.
Till all are one!
We now return to the Transformers.
Now it's time for transmissions, where we heap praise upon the audience for listening to us. We appreciate the love and attention we get from the show. We're going to talk about episode 47 of Transformers Chronicles, where we discuss issue 47 of Transformers. And I will very quickly read the social media shares and retweets from Mike Siebert Radio Podcast, TFU.info, and Serpy Matt. That's Matt Passo, one of our Crusader Club members.
And since we're all about learning pronunciations, I know that Cybert, like Cybertron.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Cybertron. Mike Cybertron Radio Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Nice. And now let's read a few comments. You know what? Where are we clockwise? John and or Maggie, pick. You can start with the first one. We can just go ahead and read that.
Sure. From Anthony at TFU.info says, woohoo, bring on the Seacons. I tagged along with the Transformers Chronicles crew on this seaside adventure and had a great time. Please check out the show.
Aww.
Okay, we can destroy those pictures now.
I almost feel bad about keeping him in that trebuchet bit. Almost.
Matt, I'm going to say
Paso.
What?
Paso.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Never would have guessed that. Says, great episode. Glad to hear Starscream is back. Just curious, is Starscream immortal in the comics as he is in the cartoons?
Well, if he was, he isn't anymore.
Not after this one.
We'll see. We'll see. I'm sure he'll be back again.
Someone did. Brent Barnhart chimed in to say no, but he did
get better a lot. I got better. She turned me into a newt. He never did get turned into a newt. Starscream never did.
No.
Yeah.
I got better. Mm-hmm. I'll take one from Scotty Cameron, and Scotty says, great episode. Man, the Seacons had a rough one. Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
They did, then they got better, then kind of not. They had an arc, I guess is a good way to say it.
They had their time. They had
multiple appearances, which is more than a lot of them can say. So,
yeah, because I remember Pat asked the question, will they come back? And I was like, nah. And I was incorrect. They did come back. Yeah. I'll read the comment from Christopher Ansbach. He says 47, 48, and 49 were the hardest issues for me to find back in the day. When I got them, that made the full run, 1 through 80. Here to a fellow completionist. I think I was short, I can't remember. I think it was issue 19 when we started the run of Transformers Chronicles, but I picked that up. So, man, thank you. I forgot. I knew it was one of those early teen issues. I picked it up, and now I have a full run of Transformers. I'm thinking about maybe getting rid of some of the ones that I know that I basically had since I was a kid and seeing if I could find a newer version. But at the same time, I had them when I was a kid. I don't want to get rid of them. I was a kid.
Oh.
Anyway,
I remember it was one of our earliest conversations, and you were talking about how you had almost a full run. And it was like, in fact, let me see. Oh, I guess I'm just missing 19. Click. Not anymore. I'm not. I'm all right, cool. Mike Pepper says, I have this. Well, quit bragging, Mike.
Succinct. I like that.
I don't have
brief.
Good job, Mike.
That's right. So what you're basically saying, Maggie, is that you'd like to be a Pepper too?
Oh my, that's probably, she's not going to understand that reference.
I know. That's an older one. Don't worry. Explain it to her later.
I'm a Pepper. That's a Pepper. Delvin's a Pepper.
No.
I'm using that for the.
It's an old commercial.
Catch her up later.
Are we talking about bell peppers?
No. It was once the Pepper got the PhD and made his own soda.
What are you talking about?
Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper used to advertise?
Yeah.
Look it up.
What?
I was feeling.
Listen, if it happened before I was alive.
Yeah, we also have comments from Spotify. We appreciate your comments on there. Again, please comment on Spotify or whatever freaking podcatcher. We'll find it and we'll read it. But for now, Spotify. Go ahead, Maggie.
Oh, well, Scotty Cameron says, great episode. Loved the TF number 47 review.
I'll take one from QI. AW74 and some other numbers and letters. And they say, I always enjoy the podcast and will keep listening. Well, we thank you. And we do hope you keep listening. However, in the UK, the comic had 332 issues. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if you know of a podcast that covers this. Why, yes, I do know that there was one that was covering the majority of the issues, and that was by John Wilson. If you look under
John Reads Comics, you can find
John Reads Comics. You can find it there. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Although I don't know how far he got. He actually only got a little ways, and then he stopped, and then we stole him for the Rod Pod. But Anthony, I know on TF University has covered all of the British ones, but not in the same way he would do them in large chunks. So.
Or do I have to do the podcast myself, they ask. And you know what? We encourage you to do so. Go ahead. And if you're looking for a place for that to be hosted, give us a contact at contact@longboxcrusade.com. That's contact@longboxcrusade.com.
Yeah.
Speak for yourself, Pat. I don't want any more competition.
Yeah, and he's got to give us a real name too, because QIAW74 is not going to cut. Well, you know what? Maybe that's his or her Christian name, so I shouldn't make fun of it.
Andrew Colnut says, love this podcast. Been using it as my soundtrack for walking the dog each morning. Really got my spark back for Transformers since listening to you guys over the last 2 months. Great show. Thanks, Andrew.
Heck yeah. Love that you got some love rekindled there. Last comment also from Scotty Cameron says, great episode. Love reviewing the introduction of the Seacons in Transformers. If we missed
this month.
Mm-hmm.
If we missed a few, we apologize. It's a good problem to have. We don't want to forget about you. Just ping us Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We'll get it straightened out the next issue. And everyone... that's the show. Please come back and join us for the next episode where we discuss Transformers issue 51, where we see how the dang book continues with only about 8 Transformers remaining. Jeez. If you'd like to hear more from us, y'all, Longbox Crusade, we are everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You look for Longbox Crusade, you will find us. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, most podcatchers to include Spotify. Look up Longbox Crusade, the exact same thing. We have a Crusaders Club that's about 46 members strong. If you come join us on Patreon, you can join up for only $1 a month. Not too many shows can guarantee such a low price, but we're grandfathered in. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. That costs you nothing. We do a live stream once a month, every second Sunday. New Warriors podcast called Come Out to Play every second Tuesday of the month. And many, many, many more additional podcast content that comes out on YouTube at least twice or 3 times a week, depending on if we're feeling frisky that week. There's even a voicemail. You can leave us voicemail comments on 707-532-5269. That is 707-532-LBOX.
Hey, Transformers Chronicles crew. This is Surfy Matt. I just had to pick up the phone and say congrats on 50 episodes. I was always more of a cartoon kid when it came to Transformers, but I've really enjoyed taking this trip with y'all and can't wait to see where the series goes from here. You might even say you've transformed the way I look at these robots. Keep up the great work, and remember, Decepticons forever. Bye, guys.
You can also email us at contact@longboxcrusade.com. John, why don't you tell us about your podcast and where you can be found on the internet? And of course, Maggie, chime in when you feel like it too.
Pick up the phone. Oh, I'm late. I'm way late on that one. I'm really sorry.
They're done.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
If you like Transformers stuff, and if you're here, we figure you do, check out the Rod Pod. That's where Maggie and I, along with John M. Wilson from the aforementioned John Reads Comics, cover the IDW Phase 2 Transformers comics in order, as well as the other MWC podcasts. The C stands for content. Look for married ... with content, or just married with content on your favorite podcatcher, or in all the podcast places, or ask your Amazon device to play Married with Content or Married with Comics, and you'll find us there. You can also do that for this podcast as well. Ask it to play Transformers Chronicles podcast. They are both available on Audible. Interweb-wise, we're on most of the social media places at MWC_podcast. On Facebook, it's MWC Podcast with John and Maggie. Pat, where can you be found?
Well, John, I am glad you asked. You can find me on the Twitter X. I keep calling it Twitter, but it's X. I'm at Christatos01, and I am also everywhere else on the Longbox Crusade Network. Delvin, where can you be found?
It's Mama named it Twitter. I'm going to keep calling it Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at DE_RAY1977. You can find me on Instagram at Delvin Ray. See y'all next time. And remember, freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Till all are one.
Till all are one.
All are one.
You got the touch. You got the power. Yeah.
Well, that was awesome.
What's happened now? Oof. Wow.
So when we've recorded, you ask everybody, so what's new in your life? We all just going to say, well, I mean, we did get to interview Bob Budiansky.
Yeah, he kept going. I'm like, hey, you want to talk about Sleepwalker? I'm your guy, man.
At that point, John was like, oh.
Yeah,
you see, the weird thing was just there's a level of nerd I want to go to. There's a level that I'm comfortable with. You've all seen it. But when Bob started describing that thing, I wanted to jump in and go, are you talking about the one in the series where Mark went and they were stuck in the hole? I know, but I didn't.
Remember the time Sleepwalker came out of a dream and he hit that bad guy right in the nose?
He would have given that Han Solo. Don't get cocky, kid.
It's also song time, Maggie. In a world transformed where things are not what they seem, it is a world of the Transformers. more than meets the eye.
I'm like Lucille from friggin' Arrested Development every time she sees that guy who just recently passed away, which is sad.
Now they can do it in heaven all the time.
They just giggle at each other constantly now.
People who watch Arrested Development know what we're talking
Yes,
about.
sorry.
Other people
don't.
who watch listen to our show are used to us just saying things out of context with no reference.
Synopsis.
So useful. Synopsis.
I'm going to go into the synopsis since I'm trying to keep us on a tight ship and get y'all to bed.
Thank you for listening.
More.